Before we get to today's presentation, I have to take a moment for some shameless self-promotion. A while ago, we did a personal appearance at a gun show. It went fairly well, so they invited us to come back. So on Saturday and Sunday, March 14th and 15th of 2020, we'll be doing an appearance at the Rick Riall Gun Show, which is held at the Polk County Fairgrounds in Rick Riall, Oregon. We'll have a couple of tables. We'll have some guns on display. We'll be talking about some training that's coming up. We'll have t-shirts for sale in a couple of different shades of green. And we'll have our laptop computer going, showing some videos that really aren't appropriate for this format. Yeah, who's the guy? Yeah, said that if you went to his website, you could see some fairly cool stuff, but if you were willing to pay to see the special website, that's where he'd be talking about really dangerous stuff. Well, I'll talk about really dangerous stuff for free. Running with scissors, mixing acids with bases. Yeah, that is scary. But anyway, come out to the gun show, say hello, it should be fun, and ladies, a couple of the crew are single. So with that, let's get to today's presentation. Hi, we're out on the range today, so please bear with gunfire here in the background. Recently, we went over 400,000 subscribers. So to everyone who's been a part of that, everybody who's watched, shared, hit the like or dislike icon, commented, donated on Patreon, and of course subscribed, I want to say thank you. And with a lot of new subscribers, we have a lot of new viewers asking a lot of new questions. So today is Frequently Asked Questions, Volume 4. Now it comes with a few caveats. First, for the most part, all I'm going to do today is talk. Second, with new viewers asking new questions, we also have new viewers asking the same old questions, so there will be some redundant information today. And third, in addition to answering questions, I want to discuss some of the insightful commentary we get, and I'll talk about that as we go. So with that, let's get started. And the first topic, the most common inquiry I get, is about ear protection and eye protection. Let's start with ear protection. This is a military-issue earplug case. It does not have military-issue earplugs in it. These days I use the orange foam squishy ones you can get at Walmart, and they work pretty well. I have earplug cases like this on most of my shooting jackets, and I do that for several reasons. First, it keeps my earplugs right here handy. Secondly, because that was part of my uniform for so long, having it right here is just what I'm accustomed to. And third, because it's so visible, it communicates to the audience that yes, I do wear earplugs with pretty much every shot I take. And that brings me to some of the insightful commentary that we get. Now let me show you something we filmed a few days ago. A while ago, we did a presentation on the FBI's famous 1986 Miami-Dade shooting, and I did some shooting demonstration, and someone contacted me and told me that my demonstration was invalid because I was using hearing protection, and the FBI agents in that case didn't have any, and that lack of hearing protection would result in lower scores both in group size and in time. I told him that in a real shooting situation, the lack of hearing protection wouldn't make a lot of difference to anybody who's at a significant level of real training. To which, of course, he told me that I was, quote, FOS. I presume that's what he meant. And he challenged me to do something I think he called a 7-card Dirty Sanchez drill. I don't know. But we will do a shooting demonstration. However, this comes with a few caveats. One being, because of the way we're going to have to film this, it won't have the highly polished presentation quality that you're accustomed to, so please bear with me. I've got 3 easy shot targets, and I'm going to shoot them 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Then I'll change magazines, even though I'm not out of ammo, and repeat the process. 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. And I'll shoot from 10 yards. Now the pistol I'm going to use is my Beretta 92FS, which I have loaded with Remington Green and White Box 9x19 115 grain full metal jacket round nose. Typically, of course, I'd be carrying hollow points, but for the target, the full metal jacket round nose will suffice. And they are loaded to about the same velocity as the hollow points, so the recoil will be about the same. Also, I usually use earplugs, but today, for the sake of conspicuousness, I'm going to use earphones. Now you'll notice after the last shot I come to the low ready. Recently, someone contacted me and challenged that I couldn't come up with a valid reason why I do that. There's a couple of reasons. One, coming to the low ready after firing allows me to survey what's going on. And two, when I'm using the chronograph, coming to the low ready allows me to see the numbers on the front of the chronograph. But to get back on task, let's look at the targets. And here you can see our numerical scores. Let's take a close-up look. Target number 1, target number 2, target number 3. Now, bear with me while I compute the numerical scores on these and while I look at the stopwatch to see what our time was. I pasted up the shot holes and computed the score, and out of a possible 120, I got a score of 113 in a time of 11.4 seconds. So now I'll do that drill again and see if we get similar scores. Let's go take a look. My apologies, we cut there when I didn't intend to, but here's our scores. Let's take a close-up look at the targets. 1, 2, and 3. And again, bear with me while I compute the score and check the time. So we've pasted up the shot holes, and for our second iteration, we got a score of 110 in 11.7 seconds. So we lost a little bit in terms of time. Now that's due partially to me, and partially because we're actually starting to lose a little bit of light. Now for our third iteration, I'm going to do this without any hearing protection. So let's take a close-up look at me. Yes, that's closer than anybody ever wanted to see me. I don't have any hearing protection in. Now sometimes I'll say, don't try this at home. This is one of those things that I'm serious. Don't try this at home. Now let's take a look at the target. For our first iteration, I have the shot holes covered with red pasties, for the second with green pasties. Let's take a close-up look at our shot holes. Target number 1, target number 2, target number 3. And again, bear with me while I compute the score and the time. So shooting without hearing protection, my score went from 113 and 110 to 109. And the time went from 11.4 and 11.7 to 11.7. Not much difference. Let's try one more without hearing protection. Now let's take a look at the target. Cut. No, don't cut. Keep it rolling. That's part of the non-polished presentation I was talking about. And here's our shot holes. Let's take a really good close-up since it's getting dark. Target 1, target 2, and target 3. And again, let me compute the score and the time. Because of the camera's light gathering lens, you might not be able to see this, but right now it's getting kind of dark out here. We fired 4 iterations, 2 with hearing protection, 2 without. As far as times, with hearing protection, we got 11.4 and 11.7. Without hearing protection, 11.7 and 10.9. A little bit faster. That's due in part to, because it's getting a little bit dark, I wasn't able to see the sights all that well, so I was kind of winging it, not taking time to aim. Now, as far as our numerical scores, with hearing protection, we have 113 and 110. Without hearing protection, 109 and 107. Again, I think that has more to do with the absence of light than the absence of hearing protection. So in our imperfect test, because we're losing light this time of day, what it shows us is that whether you have hearing protection or not, there's really no appreciable difference in time or numeric score. So this goes back to my original statement that the lack of hearing protection is not going to make any appreciable difference to anyone who's had a significant degree of real training. Now, before we go on to iPro, I want to take a detour and expand on what I said about real training. An inquiry I commonly get is people asking various versions of, who am I to tell you anything about firearms and their use? And that is a question you absolutely should ask of anyone who sets themselves up as an instructor or a teacher, as some source of knowledge or skill. And when you ask that question, if the answer you get is some kind of validation because they've taught a high volume of students or they've been teaching a long time, that should strain your credulity. Let me tell you an anecdote. When I was in the 3rd grade, and yes, there were grade schools that long ago, my 3rd grade teacher at that time had been a teacher for approximately 25 years. And she was very angry at me and disappointed in my lack of skill in drawing parentheses. Now let me show you what I mean. You have a word, and then sometimes you'll put that word in parentheses. And there's a punchline coming, so bear with me. What's wrong with this picture? Yes, those aren't parentheses, they're brackets. Now, some of you were thinking how stupid I was as I was drawing that. That's a topic we'll come back to in a few minutes. But my teacher was not only disappointed with me in my lack of skill in drawing what she called parentheses, she felt the need to contact my mother and tell my mother how stupid I was and what a poor student I was because I couldn't draw these. And yes, my teacher was very put out when my mom had to point out to her, those aren't parentheses, those are brackets. Now, another anecdote about the same teacher, and I don't mean to offend anyone, and I hope I don't say anything politically incorrect, but I'm telling you what happened. At that time, we were learning about people in other countries, and we spent a lot of time learning about the Bedouins of the Negev desert. And there was a time where my teacher had a little bit of a conference and debate with some of the other 3rd grade teachers over whether or not the Bedouins were dark-skinned people or they were Caucasians that just appeared to be dark-skinned because they lived in the desert and so they all had tans. Yes, really. Now, I could bore you for an hour with anecdotes like that, but the point is, just because someone has been teaching a long time, just because someone has taught thousands of students, doesn't necessarily mean they know anything. Now, who says that I know anything? Well, a lot of people will tell you that I don't. But as far as my education and experience and training with firearms and their use, for the long, tedious version, you can watch Frequently Asked Questions Volume 1. But the short, tedious version is, I spent 20 years in the military. My initial enlistment was 4 years in the active duty Marine Corps. I had an 0311 MOS, but I spent most of my time as a marksmanship instructor at the Marine Corps Security Forces School. Because of that, I went to some military training and some civilian academies, and I got a lot more firearms training than Marines were typically getting at that time. After I left the Marine Corps, I went into the reserve component of the military, specifically the Army National Guard, where I had an 11 Bravo 40 MOS. And I did various military training like Air Assault School and Master Fitness Trainer School, and I was in a light infantry company, and yes, my unit was activated, and I did a year in the Middle East in the recent war, and no, I did absolutely nothing that was in any way worth talking about. But I also had the opportunity to participate in military shooting competitions, winning state, regional, national, and international titles. After retiring, I've done some shooting competitions at local gun clubs, including this one. Done some stuff with rimfire and black powder, and I've done a fair amount of hunting. So that's who I am as it relates to firearms. Now, after that long detour, let's get back to the subject of eye protection. I have safety glasses, and yes, I use them. However, I don't think they're really necessary when shooting paper targets or using the chronograph. I do wear them when shooting something with a potential for blowback, like cinder blocks, soda jugs, steel plates, or the meat target. But when I'm shooting those things, I'm typically off camera, and I usually take the glasses off before I get back on camera. When we're doing the necropsy of the meat target, you will often see the glasses on the table. I don't like wearing the glasses while on camera for several reasons, and I've discussed this before, but the two primary reasons are, first, I'm dependent at least in part on facial expressions to get my point across. The glasses hinder that. And second, they look dumb. In doing work like this, it is of paramount importance to establish credibility. That's particularly difficult for me because I look dumb. Many people see this and become immediately and irrevocably convinced that I'm developmentally disabled or just plain stupid. And when this is what I have to work with, I don't need to compound that by adding the glasses to the equation. Now that brings me to the topic of some insightful commentary. A while ago I did a presentation that was basically two halves. In the first part I was shooting some steel knockdown plates and soda jugs with a shotgun. The shotgun was loaded with lead birdshot. The potential for blowback was very little. I didn't bother with the glasses. But in the second half, I was shooting steel plates that were not knockdown plates, and I was using a carbine. There was a great deal of potential for blowback. I was wearing the glasses, and you can see them if you watch the video. Well, someone commented on that using an excessive number of exclamation points and a lot of words that were all in capitals, telling me that I never wear safety glasses in anything that I do, and that my failure to do that constituted a very poor example for the kids that were watching. Okay, I'm aware that I look dumb. I have no shortage of people who tell me that. I have no shortage of people who have a look of shock and disbelief on their face when they're told that I have a 3.9 collegiate GPA. But I would ask that if you're going to make commentary disparaging my character and telling me how bad or wrong or stupid I am, I do have two requests of you. One, at least watch the video that you're commenting on, and two, put a little bit of effort into being right. Now that having been said, let's talk a little bit about the chronograph. This is the Caldwell Ballistic Precision Chronograph. For the lengthy explanation of how it works, you can watch Frequently Asked Questions Volume 3, but today there are 3 questions that I want to answer. First, when using the chronograph, I typically fire from 7 yards, and people ask, how am I able to read the LCD numbers from that distance? And the answer is, on camera, it looks a lot farther than it really is. It's only 7 yards. The numbers are about 3/4 of an inch. That's approximately 18 millimeters high, and they really are pretty easy to see. The second question is, when using the chronograph, I typically fire from 7 yards. Why? Why do I shoot from 7 yards? And the answer is, although things are a little bit different now, the FBI spent decades telling us that 7 yards was the mean distance for a lethal confrontation. So I figured that would be a good standard to shoot the chronograph, hopefully shooting it just figuratively. Which brings me to the third question, have I ever actually shot the chronograph? And the answer is, with rifles and pistols, not so much. With shotguns using multiple projectile rounds, the chronograph has taken a lot of punishment. I bent these steel rods. These pieces here that have the LED lights have been broken a few times, but luckily it's easy to find replacement parts for the Caldwell Ballistic Precision Chronograph. And saying that, Caldwell Ballistic Precision Chronograph brings me to the last topic I want to discuss today. When I say things like Caldwell Ballistic Precision Chronograph, or Remington Green and White Box 9x19 115 grain full metal jacket round nose, it brings up questions about corporate sponsorship. When I say what kind of chronograph I'm using, it's because people ask. When I say what kind of ammunition I'm using, it's because it's pertinent to the demonstration we're doing. I do frequently use Remington Green and White Box ammunition, and there are 4 reasons for that. It's readily available at my local stores. It's available in a wide variety of calibers and configurations. It creates a good balance between price and quality, and it's an entry-level ammunition that makes a good basis of comparison for the more expensive boutique ammunitions. Winchester White Box can also make a really good basis of comparison, but it's not as available at my local stores and sometimes more expensive than the Remington. But companies like Caldwell or Winchester or Remington have never heard of me. I do not have corporate sponsors. Every firearm you see me use belongs to me or belongs to one of my colleagues. When I'm testing or reviewing new firearms, I purchase them at gun stores. If I were to allow manufacturers to provide me with firearms, they might cherry pick those firearms and I might not get the same gun that everybody else buys. Obviously, it would relieve some financial burdens to have corporate sponsors, but it would also have a deleterious effect on the perception of my credibility and objectivity. So we do not have corporate sponsors. So as always, don't try this at home on what you call a professional, and thanks for watching Frequently Asked Questions, Volume 4.